Alright, new lesson. This time we're gonna look at something that's kind of basic but also applies to more advanced players, and it's power chords. It's power chords, your alternatives in power chords, and muting in power chords, two very important things. Now, if you don't know what a power chord is, it's basically the root and the fifth, and you're guaranteed to have played it, especially if you have played electric guitar. This is the E power chord, or just the 0-2 as I like to call it. A lot of people call it who don't know the notes. But if I'm just playing this E and this B together, they form this lovely power chord. It's simple, it's punchy, and it's used in everything. And the basic shapes that you probably know will be the 0 and 2, like open string on the E string, second fret on the B string. No, I meant on the A string because it's a B. And if you move it up the neck, you move it up to first fret and third fret. And you can do a lot of cool stuff like using just power chords, but can you expand on them? What can you do with power chords? We're gonna look at the alternatives and the variations first. So we're gonna look at this kind of up the neck power chord, and we're gonna do it in this area right here. This is a B power chord, but we're not really going to go into the name of the notes because that's not really that relevant for this video. I'm just going to show you some examples. We can either play just these two notes. That's the simplest form of the power chord. 7th fret on the E string, 9th fret on the A string. If we want a little more brightness to it, we can add the 9th fret on the D string as well. Not much of a difference, but it gets slightly brighter. And another thing we can do is what's called inverting the chord. I'm not going to really go into what inverting is, but it's really simple. You just take the root note, which is in this case this B, 7th fret, and you go down a string or up a string to the lower string. I'm using a 7-string guitar, so that's why it's so dark. And we're going to play that in addition to the strings. So instead of just 7th fret and 9th fret, we're going to play 7th fret here on the B string, the low B string, 7th fret on the E string, and 9th fret on the A string. That makes it a little more dark, a little more powerful. Just make sure you don't do it in every chord because it gets tiresome to listen to. You should use it as a special effect, kind of. And we can also add in this D string. So now we have a power chord with 4 strings in it. It almost gets kind of an Egyptian feeling. It's nice to combine with Phrygian scales and stuff. And we can do some variations on the kind of open string and power chords as well. We got the basic, the one I showed you in the beginning, open E string, 2nd fret on the A string. We can of course add the 2nd fret on the D string for a little more brightness. We can invert it by including the low B string. And we can also add in some more octaves. So we have this 2nd fret on the A string. If we find the octave of that one, that means the same note, just one step higher in the scales. That is the 4th fret on the G string. So we can play just these 3. That gives it a kind of cool, bright sound. And we can do the same. We can add the octave of this note we have here on the 2nd fret on the D string, and the octave there is on the 5th fret of the B string. So we can throw in open E string, 2nd fret on the A string, 2nd fret on the D string, 4th fret on the G string, 5th fret on the B string. So there we got a nice and bright 5-string power chord. And it's nice to be able to make variations on this stuff, because it gives your song kind of a bit more depth, and it makes the power chords more interesting to listen to. We can also have a look at the muting of power chords, because that can be an issue. Basically, when we're just playing the power chords on the lowest strings, which is the easiest, muting isn't that much of a deal. What you just do is that the first finger, the pointy finger or whatever you call it, that you're using, you just basically lay it over the other strings. So you can hear that it's muting the other strings. And that way, when you play, if you play all the strings, you can still only hear the sound of these 2 strings. So you don't have to worry about hitting a few extra strings here and there. That makes it a lot more fun to play, and you can basically get more energetic and do windmills and whatever. But it gets more complicated. If you're playing a power chord, let's say on this 7-string guitar, right in the middle of all the strings and the frets, and we're playing an E power chord up here. So we're on the 7th fret on the D string, on the A string, and the 9th fret on the D string. How can I do this and make sure that I don't have all my strings ringing whenever I hit some strings that I shouldn't be hitting? Same rule applies. The first finger is kind of barring over all the other strings, so it's making sure that these strings aren't really ringing out that much. And my ring finger, is also kind of barring over these 3 high strings. And my first finger is also pushing up against the E string. So it's basically also blocking that string from vibrating. And the last thing is this low E string. My middle finger is laying across in order to block that string. But here comes the issue with no matter how good you are at muting, you will run into problems like I'm doing here. That I'm just basically creating a natural harmonic when you just touch the string lightly and you play the string. What you have to do in order to counteract that is that you have to either try and mute the string with 2 fingers. If you can mute it with 2 fingers, then you're basically going to mute it a lot better. Muting it with 1 finger depends on where you mute it. If you try muting your strings with 1 finger on the 12th fret, that's basically just hopeless. You're just creating a lot of natural harmonics. But what you have to do in this case is you just have to experiment with where can I put my finger in order to make the least harmonics. In this case, there aren't really any good answers, but there we got it. There I found a nice location for my middle finger, just on the 9th fret. That doesn't make too much of a harmonic sound, but there will be some anyway, so you have to have some degree of control on your picking hand. But the whole morale of the story is that when you're playing power chords, fair enough, they're easy to play, but you still have to think about the muting, because if you don't mute properly, it's going to sound really, really bad. So just make sure that your first finger is always barring across all the strings right here, and that your ring finger and perhaps pinky finger are also barring across the strings and muting the low strings. And then you basically usually have your middle finger free to do some extra muting wherever that's required. And this is the kind of stuff that really shows up in your recordings. If you're bad at muting when recording, your recordings are not going to sound good. And you're going to hear that ringing sound all over the place. And sure enough, some people just say, well, Metallica put tape on the strings in order to prevent them from ringing. And of course you can do that, but who wants to rely on tape when you can just do it with proper technique? So anyways, that wraps up this lesson. And this lesson is of course brought to you by guitartricks.com. If you check out the website, you can get 2 weeks free subscription using the link in the description below, and it helps my channel out a lot. And also make sure that you hit that subscribe button and like button, because it promotes the video in the system and blah blah blah. And if you have any requests for future lessons, just let me know and I will look into them. See ya.